The city of Portland has gotten a lot bigger over the past few decades, but our form of government is stuck in the past and worked much better when the city was much smaller.
Commissioners currently should not be managing and running bureaus.
So that's why a group is talking about changing how Portland is run, and you will get a say in it as well. And we get this question all the time: who's behind all the shootings in Portland? We know there's definitely gangs involved, but police also say gun violence is increasing among those living on the street.
People are beginning to arm themselves, and you're beginning to see more and more weapons on people who are houseless.
Here's the story.
I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You can use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you can leave us a good old-fashioned voicemail. Just call our phone number, 503-226-5090. Portland's homeless crisis continues to send ripples of discontent through our city and the surrounding areas. It's also revealed something about Portland city government that I think may leave you shouting at your TV or your phone. For those of you who live outside of Portland, this might be the chance to say, thank heavens I live where I do. All right, let's begin with the concept of these safe rest villages. There are 6 areas where the city wants to house a total of 300 homeless people, getting them off the street. The project is way behind schedule, and now we know at least one reason why: infighting. City bureaucrats are not playing nice with each other. Listen to what Commissioner Dan Ryan, who's in charge of the Tiny Village project, had to say about that during an interview last week with our Maggie Vespa.
And then we had the predictable issues with supply chain, and then the predictable issues, as you were pointing to, about not in my bureau.
Just a quick follow-up. When you said not in my bureau, that feels like obviously a play on not in my backyard. Are there bureaus that are refusing to help with this?
I think that anytime you're, I think what I really want to say about that is that, people have plans for their bureaus. And when you're in an emergency, that's a hiccup to those plans.
Now, did you get that? People have plans for their bureaus. In other words, I have this piece of property and it belongs to my group, and I'm not going to share it no matter why you want it. This is why there needs to be a parent in charge of the City Hall family. Are you kidding me? Agree with Safe Rest Villages or not, it is at least a plan to do something. And heads up to those trying to protect their property. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to all of us taxpayers. And you should not be paying power politics during a time of overwhelming need. Problems related to homelessness, that's the #1 issue on the minds of most people right now. Recognize that and work together. Put your future plans on hold and work with each other to solve the immediate crisis. Now, Mayor Wheeler and the council have enacted emergency orders just recently that are going to let him use whatever publicly owned vacant property seems to work, no matter which bureau or department owns it. Good for you. That's a smart move. But it also underscores one huge issue. The way Portland's governed does not work very well. And I'm not the only one who thinks so.
This is Joanne, and I'm wondering, we are supposed to have a different kind of system in our city that is not working well.
Yes, Joanne, you are very much correct. Not many cities in America have our system, and it's definitely not working very well. To make sure we're all on the same page, consider this. The City of Portland has 4 elected commissioners who can live anywhere in town they want. They do not represent a particular area. Same thing with the mayor. Once elected, the mayor assigns each commissioner huge city departments with budgets in the millions or even tens of millions of dollars and hundreds or sometimes thousands of employees. Then those commissioners are expected to run the department, overseeing a department director. But since the mayor can give anyone a bureau, he can also take it away without notice. That creates instability, and instability can create silos and an unwillingness of people within the departments to cooperate with other departments, because after all, you have to look out for yourself. But wait, there is a solution. Let's hear about it from Andrew Spear.
Every 10 years, the city in the current charter is required to do a charter review. So a review of the charter to find areas where either amendments or changes should be proposed or considered.
Andrew Spear is part of something with an important mission, and I gotta say, an awful name, the Portland Charter Commission. they might as well throw Harry Potter's invisibility cloak over the top of the group. It's the most boring, vague, forgettable name I've ever heard. I hear charter and I think of fishing boats on the Oregon coast, and I don't know why Portland would review fishing boats or why I should care if they do it. But it's not about that at all. A more accurate name would be something like the Fix Portland's Broken Form of Government Group. That'd be more like it. People would pay attention. Citizens, volunteers like Andrew Spear, have spent nearly 2 years studying the way things are done now and how it can get better. Here's some of the early discoveries.
Commissioners currently should not be managing and running bureaus. So that's been a key thing. And then to answer your question more specifically, I think, yes, we should move away from our current form into something else. Not to say like you're solving all problems from that one single change, but you're heading in a direction.
That would be a nice change. Spear and the rest of the volunteers will have a recommendation for changes by the end of this month. Then there will be a series of public meetings, and eventually you will get to vote on making a change or keeping things the way they are now if you are a voter in the city of Portland. We plan to bring you a lot more information on this in the weeks and months ahead. It is a huge deal, and I hope you'll pay attention to it, even though it has such a terrible name, the Portland Charter Commission. Who knows, maybe they'll change it. So back to the homeless crisis, which, as we explained, is taking a long time for the city to solve. The mayor's office has floated some big ideas recently, including opening 3 big camps holding 1,000 people each across Portland. But that pitch drew a lot of criticism, and tonight advocates have a response. Here's Maggie Vespa.
We're gathered here today to challenge our elected officials, businesses, nonprofits, and our community at large to house 3,000 additional people by the end of this year.
A big challenge from housing advocates to the city of Portland. Get 3,000 people, about 3/4 of the area's homeless, off the streets and out of shelters and move them into housing by 2023. They call it the 3,000 Challenge PDX.
So we're asking you to pledge to be part of a solution to end homelessness now.
At a press conference Thursday, advocates called on the city to shift priorities, reallocate money earmarked for opening shelters or villages, and use it, they say, to lease vacant apartments at market rates. Several nonprofits already have programs like this, advocates say, and can provide services like addiction treatment and job placement. They argue the inventory is there.
I went on apartments.com last night at about 10:45 p.m. Guess how many apartments is listed as available? 6,966 units.
Advocates also argue it's more humane than opening mass camps or villages. A message to the mayor's office.
We picked this 3,000 number for a reason.
Last month, Sam Adams, aide to Mayor Ted Wheeler and a former mayor himself, made waves with a pitch. He wanted to open 3 massive homeless camps holding 1,000 people each, 3,000 total. Once those were open, he wanted to ban camping citywide. The plan drew massive blowback. Critics calling camps that size inhumane, arguing it hides homelessness rather than solving it. The plan never gained traction.
I'm here to work very hard to address the homeless crisis in our city.
At a press conference Wednesday, Mayor Ted Wheeler admitted the housing crisis is worse than ever. He argued the state and the feds need to do more to open shelters and grow the affordable housing stock. A funding package allocating $25 million to cities and counties across Oregon is currently making its way through the state legislature. When asked about the 3,000 Challenge PDX, the mayor said he's willing to work with anyone and everyone to find compassionate, safe solutions. Advocates Thursday invited a man who's lived in large camps and shelters to describe what it's like.
You have no privacy whatsoever. You're also a warehouse with a lot of very troubled people. And I've had everything happen from assaults. I was nearly killed in one shelter.
Maggie Vespa joining us now. Maggie, we can go back and forth about the merits of this all day long, but we do have to talk about costs. Housing 3,000 people, rent and social services to help get them back on their feet, that's got to be really expensive.
An estimated $85 million per year, say this group of advocates. And they acknowledge that's a huge price tag, but they also argued it's cheaper per capita than the city's plan to open safe rest villages, $20 million to house 300 people. And they said their point is that the city often sets a goal to open shelters and then they find the money. So they say, why not set a goal to get people into housing and then go find that money?
Wow, that is a lot of money. Okay, thank you, Maggie. Appreciate it. We'll see if this gets any traction. We're going to continue our focus on homelessness tonight by talking about another huge crisis our city is facing, gun violence. Police say a fair number of shootings involve our homeless population. In fact, just a couple of hours ago, we got an update from Portland police about the murder of a 71-year-old man named Richard Wallach. He was found shot to death at a homeless camp in Portland's Overlook neighborhood last month. This case and many others bring us to this question. Has there been an increase in gun violence among the homeless population? Here's Kyla Boshi.
We've seen the headlines.
It is a record-breaking year for shootings and homicides in Portland.
In the last 13 months, there have been approximately 1,000 shootings in Portland.
That's now the most shootings the city has ever reported.
Sadly, it's almost become routine. And a fair number of those shootings involve the homeless. Which brings us to this question. Has there been an increase in gun violence among the homeless?
It's a tough question to answer because there's not a lot of data. Nobody's tracking it. Unlike race or sex, housing status is not something logged by police when collecting a crime victim's details. Anecdotally, though, police say about 25% of the shootings involve the homeless, which is something new.
Yes, I would say that there's more shootings probably in homeless areas and communities.
Dr. Vernon Baker is with Just Compassion and does outreach with the homeless. He says those living in the streets have always been vulnerable to violence. Many of them are seeking protection.
People are beginning to arm themselves, and you're beginning to see more and more weapons on people who are houseless.
In the past, arguments between the homeless involved knives or other weapons, but now investigators say guns are becoming more common, and the consequences are deadly. Over the past year, there have been roughly a dozen fatal shootings in Portland involving the homeless or near encampments.
I remember Michael was a quiet guy.
Michael Johnson was shot and killed in Farragut Park. He was found dead inside a tent just a few blocks away from the home he grew up in North Portland. His family cherishes every photo, every memory of the 53-year-old.
So you don't look at people as homeless, or you don't put label on them. You look at them as that's my family member, or that's a member of this society. No matter if he's homeless or rich, he's still a human being.
Police haven't made any arrests in Michael's murder, and his brother sees no clear motive. Gun violence among the homeless can be fueled by a variety of factors. Drugs, jealousy, theft, you name it.
I think it's once you get out there and you've been out there for years, it gets to where, you're conditioned to that hard lifestyle, and then it's just like dog eat dog, and then it becomes like the wild, wild west.
Almost like an act of desperation.
Yeah. It is an act of desperation.
Some of the shootings we've seen involve crimes against the homeless. In late January, a man living on the street was shot dead in Portland's Old Town Chinatown after an altercation with a person in a car. Many other cases involve homeless-on-homeless crime. This man, Noah Smith, is charged with shooting another homeless man in a tent in March and killing a homeless woman.
Solving these crimes can be especially tough because people experiencing homelessness are often reluctant to work with police, even if they're the victims of crime.
People who are already dealing with various trauma and things like that.
Dr. Baker says the solution? Make guns harder to get. They're too accessible on the street, and provide safe spaces for those experiencing homelessness.
Those two things working simultaneously or hand in hand, I think will go a long way to reduce and eliminate gun violence in our communities, whether it's the houseless community or just our communities in general.
Kyle Boshi, KGW News.
Thank you, Kyle. Outer Southeast Portland has had more than its share of violence and problems with homeless people. We've been covering that, and we're going to keep at it. Last week, those forces collided in a hit-and-run death. Monday, I went to the scene where 41-year-old Cedar Markey Towler died near 114th and Southeast Foster. I wanted to see if there were sidewalks or street lights, which are often missing when people are hit and killed. Both are present at this location. Still, the driver who hit him did not stop. Now we have an update. Police announced they'd made an arrest. They charged 47-year-old Tony Panzarelli with negligent homicide and other crimes. He told jailers he's homeless. He also has convictions for theft and forgery and possession of meth. And just after midnight last night, a man was hit and killed on Southeast Division at about 65th. The driver did not stop. The man's name was not released. This afternoon, police announced they had made an arrest in the case, 23-year-old Dory Chant Chahit. Oregon's short session is already almost over, and to be honest, it did feel really short. But lawmakers sure crammed a lot of stuff into the last few days. We've got a look at some of the big bills, including that one that deals with overtime pay for farm workers, when the story continues. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. Oregon's legislative session is about to end, and this time around there wasn't as much drama as we've seen in years past. The Republicans did not walk out, even for arguably the most contentious bill of the session, the one that guarantees overtime pay for farm workers. That passed both the House earlier this week and on the Senate today on party lines. Democrats argued, of course, that farm workers should get overtime pay just like people in most other industries. Washington and California recently passed laws giving them overtime, and the Farm Workers Union says it is time for Oregon to catch up.
Not only a matter of equity and dignity and respect, but if we don't implement something, we also fear that people are going to choose to go to Washington or not come back, especially our migrant farm workers who are already saying, hey, I get paid overtime in this other state, and I'm questioning whether I'm going to come back again next year.
But Republicans argued that these extra wages will hurt Oregon farmers, who now won't be able to pay their workers. I spoke with a blueberry farmer in the Willamette Valley who said the same thing, especially when money is already tight for her business.
It's been more break even than money in our pockets.
And how can you stay in business if you're always just right on the edge?
That's been the stressful part.
She told us if this bill passes, which it now has, she will likely start having to harvest with a machine that takes 5 people to run instead of the 150 who now pick berries. We should mention the bill includes tax breaks for small and mid-sized farms to help pay the extra wages. Another big bill that just passed and is on the way to the governor has to do with air conditioning. We all know just how important and life-saving that is after the deadly heat wave this last summer. Most of the 100+ people who died in Oregon were found in their homes without access to air conditioning. Some renters also told us their landlords threatened them with fines if they installed window-mounted AC units.
It was 96.
It got up to 96 in here.
Yes.
What did that feel like?
Horrible.
Yeah, I can imagine. Under this bill, landlords have to allow window-mounted AC units as long as they fit a list of criteria. For example, their installation cannot damage the building. The Oregon Health Authority will also have to buy and distribute air conditioners to people in need. It also creates a longer-term program to help people install heat pumps in their homes. Before we get to our next bill, I want to read this email that we got from Larry. He wrote, "I'm hoping you'll recognize that your viewing audience is more than just the city of Portland." Very true, Larry. We hear you. We saw a story in the Malheur Enterprise that caught our eye and thought Larry and the rest of you might be interested. Watching in Eastern Oregon, the legislature is expected to pass $12 million to upgrade fairgrounds across a number of rural counties. This is a Republican idea that Democrats are actually on board with. The reason? Democratic leaders decided to give Republicans a bunch of money to spend on whatever projects they want, like the fairground upgrades. As OPB put it, it's an olive branch to try to keep the Republicans happy and prevent another walkout. By the way, if you're wondering where all the money is coming from, Oregon is swimming in extra tax revenue right now, so lawmakers have a ton of money to spend. Now from Eastern Oregon to the coast, we're continuing to look at the impacts of climate change in the Pacific Northwest, including how it affects big industries like crabbing. That's coming up next. Welcome back. When you think of carbon emissions, you probably think of it rising and affecting the air, which it does. But some scientists say the ocean actually absorbs about a third of all that carbon. And that can have a big impact on industries we rely on in the Pacific Northwest, like crabbing. Here's Erica Zuko.
This time of year, we kind of call it scratch fishing. Those are some dandies right there.
Commercial fishing is more than a career for Brian Mackey.
That's a big crab. It's like my hashtag, this water's in my blood. I love it. One nice one.
Even after 42 years.
Nice big crab.
Even in a Puget Sound winter.
Some people think you're crazy, but I love it. I just do. I can't help myself.
The crab he and deckhand Cody Carson are catching near Lopez Island.
Somebody picked that one.
Are crucial to industry throughout the Pacific Northwest.
And we're at $7.50 a pound right now. A nice big crab like this is worth $25.
Dungeness crab are an iconic species here. They are the single most valuable species fishery on the West Coast.
That's why Washington Fish and Wildlife researchers are studying whether ocean acidification could threaten their growth.
Scientists say that in the 200 years since the Industrial Revolution began, more carbon dioxide has been released up into the atmosphere. And they say that about 30% of that has been absorbed by the ocean.
As carbon dioxide is absorbed, chemical processes change the pH level of the ocean, making it more acidic, and reduce the materials certain species need to build their skeletons and shells.
Okay, this one's a little soft. Buyers don't want them because the shells don't got a lot of meat in them. So you toss them back and let them get hard.
Corals are some of the most sensitive organisms to ocean acidification, and so they're really sort of the canary in the coal mine. They can give us this first look at how ocean acidification is going to change lots of different organisms.
University of Washington researchers are comparing coral samples saved from a research cruise in the 1890s to the same species today.
We can learn more about our role as humans in ocean acidification, but also better understand the pace of acidification.
And so that can help us plan where are the places that are most likely to be refuges, where can we put energy into sort of protecting places.
A hopeful focus on the future drives their work, and that of Washington Fish and Wildlife. Puget Sound shellfish manager Aaron Default says so far, their research does not show adult Dungeness crab in danger.
Juveniles, however, seem to be pretty susceptible to ocean acidification.
Default says this is concerning, but not yet a tipping point for changes at the fishery.
It is something we are actively thinking about and needing to consider in the future. It's not something at this point in time that drives our management.
For now, they say, their management remains focused on sex, size, and seasons.
See how he's just big enough? It fits tight on there. That's just legal, that crab.
Setting out rules about which crabs fishermen like Mackey can catch. But they'll keep monitoring the waters that form the identity of the Pacific Northwest.
I think to a lot of the communities on the water, it's a huge part of, almost I guess you could say, heritage for a lot of places.
And the lifeblood of industries like this one.
Super interesting. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. When we come back, how you can help your local community. The spotlight is often on Portland when it comes to the homeless crisis, but small towns across the state are dealing with similar issues. That's why this week's Hey Help campaign is highlighting the Forest Grow Foundation. The group aims to help distribute food, supplies, and clothes to homeless individuals around Western Washington County. If you want to help, just scan the QR code there on your screen or go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so you don't have to give a lot. You can send as little as a few bucks or more if you'd like. Of course, they'd like it if you spend a lot more. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our story, that never ends. See you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6:30.